You know those two guys from work who won't shut up about football, but are pretty damn entertaining? Well, they decided to buy a couple microphones. And with that, we welcome you to the Cheesy Corn Sports Podcast, where Justin Adams and Martin Cheney wrangle over everything college football and NFL. Bold predictions, hot takes, and live game reactions. This is Cheesy Corn Sports. And now, here's your hosts, Justin and Martin.
Welcome back, everybody, to Cheesy Corn Sports. Cheesy Corn Sports. I almost messed it up there for a little bit. Once again, we're doing a top 24, very similar to the format of the top 24 wide receiver video that we should have put out by the time this video releases. Again, we're just going to take you through 24 to 1. We have not shared these rankings with each other. We've not discussed these at any time, even before the show. So it's going to be revealed to you as it's revealed to us. So without further ado, I'm Corn. Let's get over to Cheese.
What's going on, everyone? Cheese coming at you. Cheddar, Swiss,
Provolone.
the best of all cheeses.
You went first last time, so I'll go first this time.
I did.
So let's go ahead and get into it. Starting at number 24, I have the Buffalo Bills' own James Cook. James Cook, he was in the doghouse early last year, fumbled on his very first carry in week 1. So he had to earn carries back as the season went along. So his stat line, you have to factor that in, take that into account. But it is going to be a committee approach in Buffalo. However, James Cook established himself as explosive, a good receiver, and was efficient in both areas. And he was the more efficient back last year. So I do believe, and that he's in a great offense again with a great quarterback. So I believe his upside is limited due to the committee backfield, but I do think that he's in line for, fringe RB2 potential. So let's get into your number 24.
Yeah, my number 24 is going to be Philadelphia's new running back, DeAndre Swift. There's not a lot that are specifically on Swift that I want to talk about, but I do want people to kind of manage their expectations on what the usage for Swift is going to be. Miles Sanders was a 1,200-yard rusher in that offense last year, but it was still a committee approach, right? So he only had, I think, 250 carries with only like 20 to 30 targets. So probably something similar in there. However, the Philadelphia offensive line is one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL currently. So you should have good efficiency from Swift as long as he stays healthy.
Yep, that is the one first person that I do not have on my list. He is nowhere to be found. So close. He was close. He was in consideration at the 23-24 spot. But all right, so we'll get into my number 23 right now, and it is going to be David Montgomery. David Montgomery's situation, I do think that he's going to get more of an opportunity share than people realize. I think he could be in line for the Jamal Williams role because Dan Campbell has shown or has seen what a backfield with two high talent backs can look like. And who's to say he doesn't want to replicate that? Who's to say they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs to be a workhorse back when very well they just could have drafted Gibbs to be what DeAndre Swift wasn't, So I have David Montgomery probably a little higher than some, I would say, maybe. But I do think the upside is in the goal line carries. If he does take that Jamal Williams role, that will be where he's going to shine. So David Montgomery, number 23.
23 for me. Just to kind of piggyback on the old David Montgomery, I agree 100% with everything you said regarding the Jamal Williams role, the Jahmyr Gibbs to DeAndre Swift role. Insane comparison. That is 100% correct. Now, my RB23 is Miles Sanders, moving from Philadelphia down to Carolina. he wouldn't really be in my top 24 if not for the fact that he's the only real running back that Carolina has. I think Chuba Hubbard has had more than enough opportunity to show Carolina what he's capable of. And I just don't think that he has it really to get a substantial workload in that offense. So I think Miles Sanders at RB23 is going to be a high volume, low efficiency play, but you will get a lot of touches out of Miles Sanders in that offense.
I will make it a point to say Miles Sanders is on my list, and he is pretty good, little bit higher than where you have him. So my number 22, Mr. Dalvin Cook. And rank is a little all over the place. I see high, I see low. I think I have him a little lower than most. He's declining at a high, rapid rate, as we all see. We see the rumblings of the trade situation, or the Vikings, if they are going to move him, are they not going to move him? The latest news is that at least we know the Broncos are out because, of course, they don't have anything to trade. They have no draft capital, the whole, all that mess. But there are still some teams that are in circulation. I personally do not think he will be traded. I don't think that their running back situation behind him is good enough to just get rid of him. Dwayne McBride is getting a ton of hype. I get it, but we had a couple years of some 6-7 round running backs having some success. Look at Algier last year, right? I think Algier went 7th round. He played at I think he went 7th round, but regardless he was late. Pacheco too, but look at how quick Algier was replaced as a 7th round pick. It only takes when you don't have high draft capital, when you're a day 3 running back, you are quickly to be replaced. So I don't see Dwayne McBride taking over any role. I don't see them trading him. I think he still provides good enough value over replacement to warrant staying, and I just don't think they're going to get much for an aging running back who's declining. So for that reason, I got Dalvin at 22.
Yeah, I have Dalvin Cook. He's a little bit further than where you have him, but he's not too far away. But yeah, my RB22 is going to be James Cook from Buffalo. Little disappointed in the Damian Harris signing. I don't think he's going to play too much of a factor, but I think at times he will be he'll be an annoyance for James Cook owners, similar to the way that Darrell Henderson was for Cam Akers owners last year until the end of the season. James Cook, you said it best. I mean, the efficiency was definitely there when they gave him the ball, and throughout the year, they started to trust him more and more. After the bye week, I mean, over half of the games post bye week last year, he had at least 8 to 10 touches per game, and he definitely, what was his yards per carry? I have it here, 5.7. That's some incredible efficiency. Definitely look for that 91 rush attempts to climb probably close to around the 200 mark, similar to what Tony Pollard had last year. I think that's a good price point for him there.
Yeah, I could see that. Yep. Fair. All right. Well, let's get into my number 21. And we got the best news ever on 21 because he has 2 working legs now, finally. Now, full however many games, weeks, months, whatever, year plus from his knee injury, the situation has improved since the beginning of the offseason, naturally. The Lamar Jackson situation, of course. So the offense, compared to last year, of course, is going to be night and day. And we saw flashes last year. We just didn't see him get fully up to form, which we're seeing more and more with some of these catastrophic knee injuries. But 21 is, again, a good average for him, I think, but he has significant upside, especially in that offense. So J.K. Dobbins, 21.
All right. And at RB21, I have Cam Akers of the Los Angeles Rams. finished last season on an absolute tear, 4 straight games to close the year out with over 100 total yards. It was a rough beginning to the season last year for him, but as soon as Darrell Henderson got moved out and they started actually targeting him the ball 2-3 times a game in the fantasy playoffs last year, you saw the usage really start to go up. 17 carries, 12 carries, 23 carries, 19 carries, 21 carries. That was all within the final 6-7 weeks of the season. Really climbed up the charts, and I think Cam Akers is going to continue to climb from his RB35 finish last year.
Yep, Cam Akers. You'll see him later. On to my number 20. We got James Conner. If you've watched to this point in the video, I didn't put it out in the beginning. Please like the video, comment, subscribe, hit the bell thing, and yeah, just get alerted. If you like the content, you want to see more of it, just let us know. And then if you have any ideas for future content, or if you have any constructive feedback, or you want to just give us your rankings and tell us where you disagree and argue, we're down for that too. So yep, just let us know. Anyways, number 20, James Conner. Should be fully healthy this year. No competition in that backfield. Keontae Ingram, nah. Yeah. He had a little bit of excitement last year, but yeah, we saw what happened. Arizona's offense may hold him back. That's my only concern. Kyler can't stay healthy, and we know that offense has struggled with and without him. So just doesn't give me a lot of confidence in James Conner this year. But again, he's healthy. He will be the guy in the backfield. You have to take that into consideration because there's few people who are the RB1 in their backfield. So James Conner comes in at 20.
Yeah, absolutely. James Conner, I'm actually seeing now he was a guy that I was moving around my rankings, and then in my final rankings, I took him out somewhere and I forgot to put him back in. So he's somewhere in there too, between 24 and 18, I think is where I had him. Another one of those high volume, low talent on offenses kind of thing. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. My RB20 is going to be Dameon Pierce from the Houston Texans. Might be a little bit lower than some people have, but at the same time, I think this is actually a really good spot for him. Most people view Dameon Pierce as a solid RB2, which is exactly the middle of this range, right? Really good usage on the ground last year until he got hurt towards the end of the year. Some good, decent target share, 39 targets for a running back isn't terrible, but it wasn't really used in good spots, situationally, I guess to say. Now, there was a report came out from one of the Texans beat reporters or whatever saying that he is improving as a pass blocker. Again, it's June. I don't know how much you want to read into that, but if it is a significant improvement, hopefully that means he can be on the field a little bit more in those third down passing situations where he can start to run a couple more routes later on down the road, and we can see some more targets to really up his value from there.
Sad note about Dameon Pierce, not on my top 24, and I'm a Texans fan, so I feel a little bit upset about that. I wanted to put him in here, but I almost replaced Dalvin Cook with him. Don't ask me why, but it was biased, 100% biased. But I do think he has upside to be within the top 20 for sure. My number 19, already been seen on your list, Cam Akers. I guess we both see the potential. Most people should by now, because we all know the way he ended last season. You already alluded to that. He's only 23, so he's just still coming into form here. And he survived free agency, but he needs to survive Kyren Williams still, because you can't ignore Kyren Williams. There's been a lot of reports of Kyren Williams out of camp getting touches with the ones sometime, and a lot of good things coming out about Kyren Williams. So a lot of people forgot about him, but he's still there. But I do believe Akers did enough last year to be the guy. And I think if he can even replicate 80% of what he did in last season, he's going to be an RB2 easy. So Cam Akers, number 19.
All right. Now at RB19, I have our first rookie on this list. That is Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. So similar to what I did with DeAndre Swift, kind of looking at Miles Sanders' usage with his new offense. That's kind of what I'm doing with Jahmyr Gibbs, looking at DeAndre Swift's usage last year. Now it is going to be a little bit skewed because DeAndre Swift kind of tailed off at the end due to like injuries and stuff like that. But DeAndre Swift did finish right at RB21 last year, which kind of on principle matches this RB19 pick. Had 70 targets last year. If Jahmyr Gibbs comes out, gets 100, 150 rushing attempts and 70 targets, that would be huge for Jahmyr Gibbs. Not just for redraft value, but for dynasty value, for just like he's going to be put on everyone's radar that doesn't already have him on there. It's also funny because during our pre-draft rankings, our rookie rankings, you know, the player comp that I kept coming back to was a healthier DeAndre Swift. Well, now he's in the same role theoretically, and I think that Jahmyr Gibbs will be a great PPR option as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't disagree with where you have him ranked. He's coming up here momentarily for me, so we're pretty similar on that. 18. You know him as my best friend from last season. The one who made me look stupid. As I said, he stunk, and then he went for like the greatest fantasy performance in history. His name's Joe Mixon. Again, I don't like the guy. He has the 8th worst breakaway run rate in the NFL among qualified, which is 3. I set the threshold at 300 snaps minimum. So 8th worst breakaway run rate, 2nd most stuffed runs among the qualified running backs, 2 touchdowns below expected. Yes, I did single out things where he's not good at, but those are why I don't like him. So makes sense. Joe Mixon, but he's here because he's in a good offense. He gets opportunities. Yeah, Joe Mixon, whatever. Next.
All right. Yeah, I'm not that high on Joe Mixon this year either. Obviously, I don't have a personal vendetta against him.
I didn't like him before that happened.
So I have just a couple spots higher.
Just to clarify.
But
so.
I know. I remember texting you that day because we had just did the show that morning. Yep. I think you faded Joe Mixon that day. And then I texted you in the first quarter after he scored his like 2nd touchdown. I was like, hey, I think he heard what you said.
I did not like the feeling of having to deal with that and sit on that all day. So, thanks.
Yeah. But moving on, my RB18 this is where I have Dalvin Cook. You can't ignore the talent that Dalvin Cook has put on the field past few seasons. Finished as a top 16 running back in PPR formats for the past 4 years consecutively. He was a top 12 running back 3 of those 4 years as well. Now, the minute in the event of him being cut, because there's talk about, the post, July 1st cut or whatever it is, he falls off my rankings. Even if he goes to a team that, actually kind of fits the mold for him, I don't expect him to take over any offense after OTAs, after like all these like voluntary workouts. He's got a late jump on playbooks versus everybody. I don't expect him to take over a 3-down workhorse role like he had or has currently in Minnesota. So I think the usage will definitely fall off. Like you said, it doesn't look like the Broncos are going to be pursuing him. I don't really know why they would, or why that's really the report that's headlining everything in the first place. But Dalvin Cook has been free falling down these rankings ever since the season ended.
And it's going to continue. kind of like what I talked about earlier, he's declining quickly and he's going to continue to decline rapidly. So it's just a matter of whether you want to jump aboard the sinking ship or not at this point. All right, going on to my next. Jahmyr Gibbs. Told you we're going to bring him up. All right. So very Jahmyr Gibbs. I've been I bought into the hype for a little bit and then I've kind of backed off of it now. Um, Extreme overreaction the offseason. I think he was one of those that like he got drafted and then like people were like weird about the Lions drafting him at first, but then all of a sudden everybody was like, Jahmyr Gibbs is RB1 overall day one, better than Bijan, better what I don't know what happened, but I'm not buying it. Again, Dan Campbell seen the benefit of a two-back system when you have two good running backs. Montgomery will cut in production. I kind of already covered it a lot during the Montgomery stuff. Again, PPR upside's there. I do think he can creep into the top 10, top 8 by the end of the season. But it's yet to be seen his workload. We kind of have to see that. I at least want to see that before I can move him into the top 15. So right now I'm comfortable putting him at 17.
All right. Yeah. And I'm actually surprised that I'm about to put this guy on this list before you even say this name. And again, I was trying to be a little objective, impartial, just like you with Dameon Pierce. This is where I have Aaron Jones at RB17. With the way the Green Bay offense is going to look this year, I think it's going to be a lot more run up the middle, run up the gut heavy, utilize the strengths of the offense. We talked about it. Well, actually, we didn't talk about it. No, we did talk about it in the receiver video because I was talking about Christian Watson a little bit. But Aaron Jones, ever since his RB2 finish in 2019, his rushing rate has slowly deteriorated. He went from 16 touchdowns in 2019 to 9 touchdowns to 4 touchdowns to 2 touchdowns last year. That's on the ground. Now, he has had 5 and 6 receiving touchdowns, respectively, over the past couple seasons. He's had over 60 targets. He actually topped 70 targets out of the backfield last year with Aaron Rodgers in his final season. And it's still the same offense. You just have a guy who's not as talented running that offense, right? So I think there's going to be a little bit of hiccup there. There is still good PPR value in having Aaron Jones, but as far as running up the middle, that's definitely more AJ Dillon's game, and I think you're going to see that a lot more this
year. So you expected Aaron Jones to be on my list? You were surprised
I haven't said his name. Yeah. I mean, he's been he has literally finished as a top 10 back for 4 straight years. A top 24 back for 5.
Number 16 for me, Miles Sanders. Reason I have Miles Sanders a little higher. Have to take the contract into account. 4 years, $25.4 million. That makes him the 12th highest paid running back annually in the NFL. That has to be considered. He will be the lead back, but we have yet to see how that translates to fantasy value yet. So 16, comfortable place, I feel like, for me to put him. Contract tells me a lot. Again, lead back. And really, I tis for the taking. And as long as he's efficient, he's going to get volume. But again, 16 is comfortable until we see kind of where he falls in that, because we also do know that their offense is not good. So I will lead it into your number 15, sir.
Yeah, this is where I have Joe Mixon. And I'm not really going to speak too much on it. There was a lot of stuff that you talked about, such as the actual like running intangibles and stuff that I'm not going to argue with, because I agree with a lot of it. What I will say for Joe Mixon is that he gets a consistent workload through both the air and on the ground. He had 75 targets last year in addition to his 212 rushing attempts. 4 of his 7 rushing touchdowns came in that one game. So, I mean, we talked about spreading out the touchdowns. There was a receiver yesterday that we talked about it with. So I'd like to see something a little more along the lines of that, because there was definitely some inconsistencies, such as the week prior to that game against Carolina where he went off for 5 total touchdowns. He only had 8 carries the week prior. And then the week prior he had 17, but the week prior he had 8, and then 14. So like there's definite inconsistencies in his game. There's also a bunch of really inefficient stat lines across his game, such as week 3 last year, 12 carries, 24 yards. I don't want a running back that's going to average 2 yards a carry for an entire game. I just don't want it. But then there's other games where he has almost 7 yards a carry. Like, it's a hit or miss. You're going to win a couple games with Joe Mixon, but don't be surprised when you lose a couple games because
Exactly.
of Joe
He's
Mixon
what we
as well.
call in the industry. I say that like big deal, but he is what we call a bum. Okay. Moving on to my number 15. I have one note on this guy. Okay. His name's Ramondre Stevenson. And my one bullet point for him: I hate Patriot running backs. 0 shares of Ramondre for me this year. Next.
All right. And this is where I have Mr. Finally Healthy J.K. Dobbins at RB15. I am high on a J.K. Dobbins breakout this year. There's a lot of talk about them wanting Lamar to sit back and pass the ball a lot more this year, just become more of a passing offense. I don't know how that's going to work necessarily for Lamar and his usage. It's very possible that they start that way, lose a couple games, and go, actually, no, Lamar, you're one of the most gifted talent runners at the quarterback position in the game.
You got to let him operate. He's got to run the offense the way he runs the offense.
Right.
It's that simple.
Right. You need to scheme your offense around your talents, not have your talents mold to your offense.
And of all people,
it's not how that works. But now this is a very small sample size for J.K. Dobbins last year. But in games that he had 10 or more opportunities, and out of the 8 games that he played, that was 5 of them, he played phenomenal. Did finish the season with over 5.5 yards per carry. Showed that he can do it against Buffalo early in the season. On the ground, had a touchdown, and through the air, we had 4 catches and a touchdown as well. Later in the year, put up 13 carries for 125 yards against a Cleveland defense, which is actually regarded as one of the better run defenses in the league. I actually remember telling my wife to bench J.K. Dobbins that week in our family league because they were playing Cleveland. And then she got mad at me because he went off.
Remember?
Well, he didn't go off.
Could you imagine if you had a fantasy podcast?
But still. Oh, man. Insane. But anyway, I'm very high on J.K. Dobbins. Finally healthy. It's still a running offense. Until I see otherwise, it's still a running offense. I think J.K. Dobbins, still only 24 years old, great window for him to break out in this year, and I think he does it. RB15.
Yep. I do not disagree with you having him there at all. Again, Lamar's going to do his thing. And I would imagine in the contract talks, that was kind of stipulated in there. Like, Lamar probably requested a pretty good amount of control on how the offense operates. But because we know he can operate like that, again, everybody just kind of forgets how good he is. The man was just an MVP, So he's still, in my opinion, a top 6 quarterback in the league, potentially top 5. So, all right, let's get into my number 14. And I recall you mentioning me not saying his name yet, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones for me is his PPR upside. It's undeniable, right? Um, the RB coach, I want to say the running back. I've been talking too much fantasy. Running back coach Ben Sermons said he's flying around. He's faster than anybody in that room, and he's fast as anybody on the field. Um, the only thing is the adjustment period without Aaron Rodgers. That's been such a thing for so long. Um, again, I've said this a lot this video, but what does it look like? It has to be a question that comes up for a lot of these situational changes because it's the biggest elephant in the room. Um, but yeah, adjustment period for A-Rod has me put him out of the top 12. But other than that, yeah, 14 is pretty respectable, I think. But yeah, definitely PPR leagues, high upside.
Yeah, definitely. I personally, what I like most about Aaron Jones this year, especially in draft season, is the discount that you're going to be able to get in your drafts. He's no longer going to be a running back you take at like the 2-3 turn. He's going to be like a 5th, 6th round running back that will still be able to put up those numbers for you. So I love the value in Aaron Jones this year. But exactly like you were saying, what does the adjustment look like? Which is a perfect segue into my running back 14, which is Kenneth Walker. Now, I'm not going to shoot over the moon and say Zach Charbonnet is going to get 40% of the carries, immediately take away all that from Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker from week, 6 on, just insane volume, right? And did very well with it. Had over 1,000 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns on the ground. It was fantastic. Now, there were a couple games where he had like 26 carries or 29 carries, like damn near 30 carries. And that I don't think we're going to see as much of this year. He can still get 18 to 20 opportunities in a game and put up great numbers for you, which is why I have him fringe RB2, RB1 territory. But there's no denying the fact that they did draft Zach Charbonnet with a decent amount of draft capital. It was a day 2 pick, I think, round 2 or 3 it was, and left a lot of us scratching our head. Basically the same exact draft capital that they drafted Kenneth Walker with, they drafted another running back the very next year with. So we need to at least acknowledge that there is going to be some kind of adjustment. I don't think he's going to be seeing 90% snap share like we saw last year in some of his games. But the talent is still there. It's still his running back room. And he'll still put up good numbers for you.
Yep. I will touch on Kenneth Walker in just a couple spots. Let's move on to my number 13, Travis Etienne. So Travis Etienne situation, we all know Tank's big. Tank words are hard and important. Tank Bigsby. Not too worried about him yet. I say yet loosely because there's always the potential. Tank Bigsby. Oh, Atlanta. I'm just going to call him Tank. Tank. All right. Tank does have the talent to come in and take over part of that workload. Etienne can improve on his receiving. I mean, he's a great receiving back, but he needs more opportunity. But he's explosive and on an ascending offense. And again, I'm not worried about Tank Bigsby yet. I won't worry about him until I have to. Right now, Travis Etienne's the guy. I expect a big season for him. Would put him top 10, just leaving a little room for in case Tank Bigsby does impact the offense at all.
All right. Yeah, I will get to ETN here later on. Yeah, my RB13, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. It's Ramondre Stevenson for me. I completely understand everything you said about the Patriots offense. Well, your one note
or
about the
just
Patriots
Stevenson
offense,
in general.
because right, I mean, he finished as the RB7 last year, but not because of his rushing volume. It was the 88 targets, 70 receptions that he had out of the backfield. Now, which is great for PPR, which is what we're covering. Single QB PPR format. That's great. Damian Harris is out of town. I don't see another running back in that running back room that has the talent really to bring forward any like significant takeaway from his volume. And so for that reason, I still think he's a fringe RB1, RB2. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. I just don't trust Belichick to go with talent over just warm human bodies that he can develop into efficient players. So I've been burned by the Patriots backfield too many times by a running back who had a great season and then, yeah, we can guess who. And my number 12, we have Kenneth Walker the third, Ken Walker the third, whatever you want to call him. Overreaction, Charbonnet. It's interesting to me, the philosophy of running backs being drafted versus the established running backs, and the hypocritical part. Here's what I'm talking about. You'll have a running back come into the league, second, third round, and people are hesitant to really give them value sometimes, and they really pick them apart and stuff like that. But Charbonnet seemingly had this huge increase over the course of the beginning of the offseason into the draft. But I get the talent's there, but Kenneth Walker has proven himself at the NFL level, right? He's proven that he is a reliable workhorse back. The other reason why Charbonnet doesn't concern me too much is, let's say he does get a 40% workload, right? Kenneth Walker's scoring was in his breakaway runs. He had the fifth most among qualified running backs breakaway, or fifth highest breakaway run rate, 7.4, and he actually had 5 touchdowns more than expected last year. His efficiency wasn't as terrible as people think. Some of the advanced metrics show that it was, but if you kind of narrow them down, some of them were okay. So Kenneth Walker, he actually had 5 touchdowns more than expected last year, which, you know, when you look at the overall, a lot of people talk about his efficiency, a lack thereof. When you look at some of the advanced analytics show that, yes, he wasn't very efficient overall. But if you break those down to some individual numbers that tend to be more important, the efficiency is there in certain areas. That leads me to believe that Charbonnet will never get more than a 50-50 share of this backfield. I think 60-40 is the ceiling. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kenneth Walker holds it down to a 70-30, just because he's shown the talent. Charbonnet has yet to prove anything in the NFL. I'm riding with Kenneth Walker until shown otherwise.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we need to think about here, right? Like, looking back to not this offseason, but last offseason, right? Going into the draft, it was everyone talking about the running backs. It was always Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker or whatever, right? Those were the 1A, 1B of the running back class last season.
Yeah.
And we saw the...
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Right,
yep.
right.
Yep.
I was talking like real football, NFL type as well. Coming into this year, it was Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, not Bijan and Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet, like I think you...
But that's like a tier 3 RB3.
Going into the draft. For Dynasty, it was Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet. So I think there is a disparity of talent. Not saying Zach Charbonnet isn't good. I do like Zach Charbonnet. Or I like his talent, but I like Kenneth Walker's talent so much more. So I think the closer we get to the season, the overstated hype around Zach Charbonnet is going to die down.
I think it's kind of already leveling just a bit, but it should. Right. And Charbonnet gets hurt preseason with
Right.
anything. Ken Walker's the guy. So, all right. Number 12 for you.
This is where I have Brees Hall right at RB12. Coming off the ACL, it can be kind of tricky to navigate, right? All the reports coming out of Jets camp is they're optimistic he plays week 1. He's on track. He's looking good. This last report says that he's already been clocked going over 22 miles an hour on like a radar gun that they had him run past or whatever it was, which is all great, all good. However, still an ACL. You want to be cautious with it, especially when it comes to like rankings. So Brees Hall definitely was off to a hot start last year. Just consistently putting up 13, 15 plus fantasy points per game. Actually never had a single game under 10. His very first game in the NFL, he put up 10 points against Baltimore. And that was with just 12 touches. So, and then those touches continuously grew and grew and grew throughout the season until he ultimately got hurt against Denver. But if he comes back, he's all squared away, good to go. It's going to be nothing but Brees Hall going up in this Aaron Rodgers offense. If everyone stays healthy, this Jets offense should be very fun to watch.
We'll talk a little bit more on that later. All right, my number 11, Najee Harris. Good old workhorse. Volume, more volume. That's the name of the game with Najee. That's what you expect. You don't expect much efficiency. You just get volume. And we're okay with that. When we can get volume, we're happy with that. Not very efficient. 3.9 yards per carry. Led the league. So there's a stat the amount of times somebody was stuffed at the 1 yard line and did not score on that drive. The team did not score at all on that drive. He had 7 of those where he got a carry on the 1 yard line and led to them not scoring. So again, not very efficient. Can't be trusted all the time when you need. Let's say it's 4th and goal, and you need a touchdown. I wouldn't rely on Najee too much, but the volume makes it not matter too much when it comes to fantasy. The guy is just going to get. He's probably going to have probably the biggest workload in the league. He started slow, finished strong. I think he'll have a strong year. 11. I mean, I really don't even see a top 10. Like, I think 11 is just where he's going to finish. That's just fact of the matter. This is kind of just where he lies. The efficiency would put him into the top 10 plus the volume, but we don't have that. So 11's fair. Let's get into your number 11.
Yeah, well,
I guess I was right on Najee. This is where he's going to finish.
So I mean, I have I've also kind of tiered out my running back rankings as well, and this is right about where I have that second tier line. It sounds bad to say because then I'm insinuating that Brees Hall is a tier 3 running back, and he's not. But just for right now purposes, right? Najee Harris, the biggest drop in value wasn't the carries or the yards per carry last year, right? Because his rookie season, he also had 3.9 carries. The value was that he had Ben Roethlisberger as his quarterback, and he had 94 targets as a rookie, 74 catches. He had, take out those targets, right? And just look at the rushing numbers. And his rookie season and last year are very, very similar. There is a less than 30 carry difference, less than 200 yard difference, less than a 0.1 yards per carry difference, and the exact same amount of rushing touchdowns. The talent is still there. And now that they have a new offensive coordinator, or they did have a new offensive coordinator, they have Kenny Pickett in there developing a little more. I think it's inevitable that we're going to see the offense look a little bit better. At the minimum, they're going to look a little bit better. Why? Because offenses that stay on the field together for long times, they just naturally gain chemistry over time. And so they are naturally going to get better. They're going to figure this out. And so, but like I said, that's all speculative. So until I see that happen, he's going to sit here right at that RB11 for me, especially because of the guys that I have above him. We've already seen them go above and beyond, right? So until I see Najee go above and beyond like that.
I mean, it's fair. We did see the
he's going to sit right here at 11.
The opposite regression. There we go. Words again got me. Checkmate. We saw the regression a little bit last year. People are upset with him because people drafted him first round last year, expecting him to be, at least top 5 running back. But so a lot of people are upset with that, but it's okay. We're going to move on. He's going to have a chance to redeem himself this year. Good luck, Najee. All right, we'll go to my number 10, and we kind of just flip-flop some people here. Brees Hall. Brees Hall climbed in my top 10. I originally had him about RB14. Climbed in my top 10 as the injury reports and camp stories and the video of him running come out. It's looking more and more like he's going to be ready to rock and roll. Brees was a pretty clean ACL tear, so it's not going to be one of those insane where they ruptured every ligament in their knee. I do expect that he will be back. I think there will be a little bit of a adjustment period into getting comfortable with running and cutting on that leg. As we know, with my bicep in particular, it's a mental block of just getting running and jumping on that again, depending on how much of a workload he's able to take in the preseason and leading into the preseason, et cetera, is going to show us how ready he's going to be for the season. If he's able to participate in most of everything and then participate fully in the preseason, the sky's the limit. RB1 upside. But like I said, all indications point to him be ready for the season. I actually I found this estimate for his 2023 output. It's very interesting. So it's 10 simulations through PFF's Pro Football Focus Simulator. And every single out of 10, every single one had him exceeding 1,000 total yards, 65 all-purpose yards per game, assuming 17 games played, 4.38 yards per carry, which ranked about 20th among running backs with at least 6.5 carries a game. And they even took into account the potential injury decrease because they actually decreased his effectiveness, took that into account, went from 5.8 yards per carry, which he had last year, to a maximum of 4.94 in the simulations. So I say that to say he's going to be a top 10 back. I expect him to finish higher than this. He will probably climb my rankings more closer to the top as we come into the season. So Brees Hall, number 10.
All right. Yeah. Everything you said was spot on. Moving on now to my RB10. This is where, to continue the flip-flopping, this is where I have Travis Etienne. So I'm not concerned about Tank Bigsby. I was initially concerned about like Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker, but now I've talked myself back into a sense of realism. And if Zach Charbonnet does not concern me with Kenneth Walker, there is no way in hell I'm letting
He's a lesser of Charbonnet.
Concern me with Travis
by a long shot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. More importantly for me is there is nothing that Tank Bigsby can do on the field that I feel that Travis Etienne can't do better. It's not like in Detroit where they have a receiving back and a power back, right? These are two of the same type of running backs, the elusive, kind of catch the ball out of the backfield kind of thing. And Travis Etienne broke out in a fantastic way, at least for me last year, over 1,100 yards on the ground, in addition with 300 yards through the air. The biggest issue with me with Travis Etienne is fumbles. He had 5 fumbles last year. I cannot tell you how many times I would watch a Jaguars game and he would get a reception or he'd break off a 20, 30-yard run, and then the safety would come and punch the ball out and they lose possession. And, of course, in fantasy, that's minus points, right? So I would like Travis Etienne to get a hold on the fumbles before I move.
That's one thing I didn't bring up. His fumbles, yes. Very, very, very obnoxious. I am no longer Etienne owner in Dynasty, though, so not my problem anymore. But very good player. Number 9, Jonathan Taylor. I actually expect Richardson to hurt more than he helps. I think he's going to do that by losing a lot of touchdown opportunities. I think Anthony Richardson is going to take a lot of running opportunities away from him naturally because he's a good runner of the football. So that it's not this world, I believe, where Richardson is going to run, and Jonathan Taylor is just going to get this boost in value. I don't see that. We know Jonathan Taylor; he's a monster, right? Jonathan Taylor, top 3 running back in the NFL on ability, maybe 1. But again, I just personally expect Anthony Richardson to hurt more than he helps by taking those touchdown opportunities away and taking rushing opportunities away. So for that reason, Jonathan Taylor surprisingly comes in at 9 for me.
Yeah, that is surprising for me at least. I have Jonathan Taylor sliding a little bit out of that like 1-2 category, but I don't have him sliding that far. But RB9 for me is Josh Jacobs. And I think I might still be a little too low on Josh Jacobs. Had 340 carries last year. I believe he led the league in rushing last year, 1,600 rushing yards with 400 yards through the air to, eclipse that 2,000 all-purpose yards. 12 touchdowns on the ground. Fantastic. They don't have a strong quarterback to continue any elite passing attack. So I don't really see the carries going away. However, whenever you see a player kind of reach that ceiling, I feel that it's a huge ask to ask them to do that year over year. We've seen Derrick Henry do it, but we've also called Derrick Henry the likes of a unicorn, right? The anomaly, the physical anomaly that is able to do that. And if you start to just assume other players can do it too, it's no longer an anomaly. So I think there will be a little bit of natural regression for Josh Jacobs. However, I do think we will see around the 300 yard or the 300 attempt mark for Josh Jacobs, and he should still.
Josh Jacobs will pop up a little bit later on my rankings. All right, let's go into number 8. The inhuman person himself, the human robot, whatever you want to call him, the indestructible, gigantic human of a monster, of a being, of an ogre, of the most explosive athlete in a huge frame we've ever seen. All right, Derrick Henry. We know, like, the one person in fantasy history that is probably one of the greatest fantasy running backs of all time without a lot of receiving, without a lot of potential backfield receptions, the whole 9. Father Time eventually gets everyone, though, as we know. And it's a matter of, do you want to be on this ship when it just hits the iceberg and floats to the bottom? Because I think the fall off might be significant, steep, and quick. I don't want to say it could be an injury, but we know how much workload Derrick Henry has gotten over his career. He has taken a lot of punishment over his career because he's just a bruising physical back, and he gets a lot of carries. But yeah, what's more is there to say? He's here because his age, Father Time. I get it. We keep saying that every year, but one of these years we're going to be right, and I think we're getting there. And I think this might be the year that we see a slight drop off. So number 8, Derrick Henry.
Yeah, you can't imagine that there is that much tread left on the tires, right? Especially when you're getting 300-400 carries a year for close to half of a decade. You're asking
and then
a
style
lot
which he runs
for
the football
any
is
human
just
being. I don't care how physically gifted you are.
It's physically demanding.
Right, 100%. Yeah. Now, here's a guy who, Chris Collinsworth, right? Here's a guy. RB8 for me, 26 years old, finally getting what appears to be a look at being the featured sole running back in this offense. This is Tony Pollard at 8. Finished as RB8 last year with less than 200 carries. He finished with a career high 193 carries last year, and he's been in the league for 4 years now, going into his 5th, and he's been incrementally growing his carries per year. But I want to talk about the similarities that we've seen throughout his career. Yards per carries, apart from his sophomore year, have ranged between 5.2 yards per carry to 5.5 yards per carry. 3 out of the 4 years of his career, he's done that. 2 years in a row now, 39 receptions. The only difference, within 40, 50 receiving yards of each other over the past couple of years. The only difference that we saw this past year versus 2 years ago was the fact that he had 3 receiving touchdowns versus none the year prior. Now, we finally get to see Tony Pollard without Ezekiel Elliott. However, there is talk that if Zeke doesn't find a new team, he would be open to returning to the Cowboys. But I still think you're going to see Tony Pollard in that feature role regardless. I think it's inevitable that he gets at least 225 carries this year, maybe upwards north of 250. And if he continues the averages that he has had throughout his career, I think we are in for a top 5 finish.
I am 100% with you. You will hear Tony Pollard in a moment. But first, Saquon Barkley. All right. Saquon Barkley, we know the risks. We know what we're getting out of Saquon Barkley. Again, not a lot to say. Potential for a holdout. Seeking a long-term deal. We'll see how that goes. Has still maintained his explosiveness even through his lower body injuries. His speed has stayed the same. His yards per carry has slightly went down, but he has shown that he can somewhat stay healthy. We just got to hope that lasts and hope that it doesn't cause him to decline quicker because he's 26 now, going to age 27. We'll see. Could start the decline soon, but it is yet to be seen. Saquon is still Saquon. At the end of the day, you can't put him too much lower than this. Just that's facts. So, what's your number 7?
My number 7, this is where we are getting to see Saquon 2.0 in Bijan Robinson. Going to the Atlanta Falcons, which is a fantastic landing spot, right? If you look back on our pre-draft rookie rankings running back video, there's a comment in there talking about, hey, what if Bijan went to Atlanta? That would be nasty.
Yay.
Well, we get to see it now. This is the same head coach that was the offensive coordinator during the peak of Derrick Henry. And they've already committed that they're going to run the ball down people's throats. This was one of the most run-heavy offenses last year with the likes of Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson. I think Bijan Robinson is primed and ready to go for a top 5 rookie season of all time.
I don't like that ranking. I don't like the spot, though. All right. Number 6. I'll get into Bijan in a moment. Number 6 for me is Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
There's something about Josh Jacobs I just don't like. Just fantasy wise, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've just never had a share of a Raiders running back, and I know he broke out last year. I guess maybe want to see it some more, but I mean, you can't deny what we saw last year. 31.6 PPR points in weeks 4 through 7. That is absurd. They had a bye week 6, so 4, 5, and 7. Finished second in total fantasy points per game. His opportunity share is massive. His talent is undeniable. You just got to pay attention to Josh Jacobs at this point. As much as I'm just kind of not really, I haven't really just, I guess, focused on him a lot because I've never had him in fantasy, or never really kind of desired to have him in fantasy. But now that might have to change. So change for a lot of people this year. Josh Jacobs, number 6, and potentially could be higher.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs was always that unsexy round 2, round 3 running back that you would take that you never really looked forward to having, and then all of a sudden he just breaks out last year in just this huge way. But yeah, so speaking of huge workloads, this is where I have Derrick Henry at RB6. You covered all of the risks and everything that we talked about, which I agree with, but now I'm going to talk about why some of those concerns can be put to bed, or at least should be put to bed until we do see that regression. We all know 2021 Derrick Henry broke his foot and only played half of a season, only 8 games. The year before that was his 2,000 rushing yard season with 378 carries. There was a lot of concern going into last year after that broken foot of, okay, is this where we see the drop off and regression, coming off of an injury? We've never really seen Derrick Henry injured before. What is that going to look like? Well, he turned around and finished with the second best fantasy season outside. Actually, I'm sorry. It is the best fantasy season for him outside of his 2,000-yard rushing season. He had 349 carries, which was only second to that 2,000-yard rushing season. 1,538 yards, which is 2 behind his second most. And he had 13 rushing touchdowns. Still averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry. And then the big kicker, the biggest knock on Derrick Henry was always that he doesn't receive the ball. They don't throw it his way. Well, last year, his targets went up from 20 to 41. And he had, instead of 18 catches, he had 33. I would love to see more receiving work out of Derrick Henry in addition to his 300-plus rushing attempts, because that is just a huge formula for a top 3 running back finish. You can finally – I wish this would have been the case, 4 years ago, because then we would have seen the prime of Derrick Henry just be consistent RB1 for 4 years. It would have been great. But we see it now. He is 29 years young, which is grandpa age for running back. But until we see that drop off, I think we need to keep adding Derrick Henry as a
100% fair.
top 6
I don't necessarily disagree. All right. My number 5, Nicholas Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. Okay. Nick Chubb, efficiency is the name of the game. We all know how efficient Nick Chubb is. He's been that way his entire career. It's just been, there's always been somebody there to cut into his workload. Well, last year he had a 56.7% snap share, which is 22nd. But if we look at his efficiency again, 2 yards per carry, number 9, yards per touch, 5.4, number 13, juke rate, number 4, beta tackles, number 1, breakaway run rate, number 7, breakaway runs, number 1. It's there. Yards created 6, 8 yards per created per touch, 18. Like, everything is there, and everything is within the top 20 outside of his run blocking. The only thing, I think the Browns are going to pass the ball a little more this year. So I think his opportunity might go down, but Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb. He's going to get yards. When you give him opportunities, he's going to make the most of them. His value is right there. He's still going to get you points. So Nick Chubb, number 5.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, number 5, indeed. I'm not going to reiterate everything you just said. Don't let me do that. But what I will say is, even if they do throw the ball a little bit more, I am still ecstatic with the talent and efficiency that Nick Chubb has, even if his 300 carries drops to 250. Because I'm just saying, we saw 190 carries out of him in 2020 and 228 carries out of him in 2021, where he still finished as RB11 and RB13. So even just dropping from 302 to 250 carries, I am okay with where Nick Chubb will finish, which is going to be
Yep.
right.
Speaking of efficiency, I got one more number here. Formation specific numbers.
Yeah, RB5.
Stuff run, number 2. I'm unqualified, so good luck stopping him. And I mean, average defenders in the box, 6.8, almost 7 defenders in the box stacked against him. Stacked front carry rate, number 9, 21.9%. I mean, just everything just says efficiency with him. All right, so we'll get into my number 4, Mr. Tony Pollard. Yes. I said that right, number 4, and I almost put him higher, but I couldn't do it. Tony Pollard, elite explosiveness. Led the NFL in breakaway run rate with a minimum of 300 carries at 8.08. 31 runs of 10-plus yards, 15 runs of 10-plus yards over expected. So he had 15 carries of 10-plus yards over expected, and he had 31 of those runs, which means he was expected to have 16. You know, a lot of people forget in high school, he played wide receiver. That's why he's such a good receiver. As a sophomore at Memphis, he led the nation as a kick returner. He had the 5th most all-purpose yards in a season as a redshirt freshman, and he has a 3rd most all-purpose yards in Memphis history, and he didn't play full 4 years. So the guy is getting the opportunity he needs now. He hasn't taken a ton of punishment. Tony Pollard is elite and is a potential, in my opinion, to be the RB1 this season.
Agreed. Okay, my RB4. I think where I had Tony Pollard is where you had Jonathan Taylor, because now where I have Jonathan Taylor is where you have Tony Pollard. I have Jonathan Taylor at RB4. Little bit of concern due to the ankle that was hindering him all last year. Had surgery this
all reports
season.
Saying good.
Looking good indeed. Absolutely. I think you can basically chalk last year's disappointment up to the lack of coaching that Indianapolis saw as a whole. And I think he's gonna come back in a big way this year. It is a contract year, you know, for all the people that like to believe in that type of stuff, like it actually plays a factor. But personally, I think we're probably going to see something similar to his rookie season versus his RB1 season. Like I said, I don't like to assume a player is just going to sustain their ceiling. Excuse me. I don't like to believe that a player is going to sustain their ceiling. I like to account for a little bit of natural regression and go somewhere in the middle, right? So his rookie season, 230 carries, RB1 season, 330 carries. Put it somewhere in the middle, around 250, 260, with around 45 targets. And the touchdowns are probably going to come down from that 18 mark that he hit in his RB1 season. But I still think he could easily get 10 touchdowns regardless of what Anthony Richardson does on the ground, right? So I think Jonathan Taylor comes back. He's going to be great. And I think the Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor show is going to be a lot of fun.
Trust me, I definitely think it's such a compelling team to watch. How that dynamic is going to be. It's going to be, the Colts are the worst, most interesting team probably ever. But they're not going to be any good because Richardson's not good. Sorry. I hate to break it to everybody. He wasn't good in college. He's not good now. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know why everybody's trying to make him a good quarterback. Just because he threw some good passes and some booty shorts. Zach Wilson did that. Who cares? Wasn't a good quarterback. Did get better. We'll go over him in the quarterback video. But I got stuff to say. Number 3, Mr. Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, 28. Decline is coming, but not shown just yet. Austin Eckler still elite. RB1, RB2, RB3. he has to, in my opinion, he has to fall somewhere in there. You cannot put him lower. It could be his last elite season, though. I think he may have 1, 2, but I would bank on there being 1 of elite production, and then we might get down to really good, vice versa. But I do think this is the last year to get his full value and maybe his ceiling. We will see. But Austin Eckler, I am definitely targeting him this year.
Yeah, Eckler is my RB3 as well, and I can see an easy claim for that RB1 title again. His situation is exactly the same as it was last year. Same quarterback, same offense, same coach, same everything. There was some talk about him seeking a trade because of the contract dispute, whatever it was. That didn't happen. He's back in Los Angeles.
Nutty.
He was targeted 127 times last year. Like, that would be, like, I don't know what that is in comparison to, like, receivers, but that would probably be top 20 in receiver
100%.
targets as well, I would imagine. But with that being said, right, he has been healthy 3 of the last 4 years, taking out that year that he only played in 10 games, which he still finished as the RB26. But he has finished as the RB4, RB2, and RB1 in PPR formats. He has had at least 90 targets in all 3 of those seasons. He has had at least 70 receptions in all 3 of those seasons, at least 5 receiving touchdowns in all 3 of those seasons. And he had 12 rushing touchdowns 2 years ago, and he had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. I think that's the best thing with Austin Eckler is he has yet to have a 1,000-yard career rushing season. He's had over 900 previous 2 years, but he has yet to eclipse 1,000. But Austin Eckler, RB3, very possible RB1. I feel like a lot of these guys, you could just move them
And
around.
what did you say his targets were?
An easy claim for RB1. Last year, 127 targets, 2021, 94, and then 2019,
last year because
he was healthy
Justin
again,
Jefferson
was
had 184 targets. So that's all you need to know. Eckler had more targets than Jalen Waddle. Just a heads up. Jalen Waddle had like 75 receptions, like 117 targets. So, all right, my number 2. Well, we meet here, Mr. Bijan Robinson. Where is my? Let's go.
Wow.
I tanked. And that was it's really loud in here.
Wow.
My ears are kind of rattling right now. See, I completely lost my train of thought. But but what I was going to say was, our league of record, Dynasty League, Martin Cheney can attest. I tanked going into the season, tanked the entire season just to get Bijan. Yeah, I did it the right way.
Properly.
I didn't bench people. I traded good talent away.
Could
not have found a better landing spot. You already said it. Day 1 offensive focal point with the team that runs more than any team. Skill set is elite. What is there not to like? I had him at 1, but I'm like, you know what? Let me not be too biased here. I'll put him in 2. Just put it that way. I'll revere my number 1. It's probably pretty obvious since he's number 2. But RB1, Bijan Robinson will finish as RB1. Mark my words.
I would love to see it. I think that would be huge for running backs to take back their value in fantasy football because I think there is an ongoing epidemic of running backs just overall losing their value in fantasy football to the wide receiver position.
We'll discuss that.
But that will be a topic.
Yeah, we'll discuss. We'll see. We'll see if it's enough friction to warrant a video.
Right. Anyway, my RB2 is Christian McCaffrey, which I think then you know who I am putting at RB1. But my RB2, Christian McCaffrey, it's nothing against his talent. It's nothing against anything he did or anything of that nature. I simply don't trust, the same way you don't trust Bill Belichick with running backs, I don't trust Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan will tell the media that he's going to do one thing and then on principle do the polar opposite
Looking at you,
during the game. I love the gadget. Yeah. I love the gadget plays and all the fun, entertaining that goes on during a 49er game. But I don't know what's going to happen with Christian McCaffrey. I think his value, it doesn't change much, but I think his value is definitely different if you have Brock Purdy at quarterback versus if you have Trey Lance at quarterback versus if you have Sam Darnold at quarterback. The value varies based on that, and I just don't feel comfortable solidifying his spot with those variables to include in a Kyle Shanahan offense as the RB1. Very possible he still finishes as the RB1. I'm still definitely putting him on my list to target in drafts. If he falls to me, I would love it. I would take him without a doubt.
All right.
But he's my RB2.
Your RB2 is my RB1, obviously. Christian McCaffrey. I'm the opposite of you. I think he's quarterback proof.
Right.
Personally. I do think he will get more carries under Purdy, but I don't think he'll necessarily get more opportunities. I think he's going to get the same opportunities regardless. Right. It's just a matter of where they come from. Are they going to come from receiving? Are they going to come from rushing? The whole nine. Because he actually had his best performance week 8 with 40.3 fantasy points. And, he did do good. Week 13, Brock Purdy took over. And he finished first, second, fourth, 17th, second, 9th, second, third, and first to finish the season. But, it wasn't too far off of 5th, 19th, 6th, 8th, 4th, second. Like, it's still 11. Like, he still produces no matter the situation. Quarterback proof, in my opinion. Focal point of the offense. Under contract until 2025. Christian McCaffrey's the best running back in the league. Sorry, but he's the best running back in the league. The only person that will unseat him is Bijan because he's the only person with a potentially better situation and enough talent.
Yeah. All right. I guess it's up to me to close us out on the rankings here, huh? You were very low on him. I'm as high as you can be on him. This is where I have Saquon Barkley at RB1. You were talking about differences in system changes and stuff, or situation changes. If I look at the situation that Saquon Barkley had last year, it was that offense did not flow through Daniel Jones. That offense was severely dependent on Saquon Barkley and his success. If it came down, I remember the Green Bay game in London. It didn't come down to Daniel Jones making a play. It came down in a game-winning drive to Saquon Barkley making plays. And he did. Talent there, got it. I do believe the Giants' offensive line got significantly better this offseason, or over the past 2 off seasons. I think Brian Dable knows what he has in Saquon Barkley, and I think that they are going to continue to use him, if not more, this upcoming season. The biggest thing with Saquon Barkley, my biggest knock on him last year, in my opinion, the only reason he finishes as RB5 last year was the fact that out of all 57 receiving or receptions he didn't have a single receiving touchdown. He had 76 targets, but no receiving touchdowns. So I think there's going to be at least some natural progression there because the rushing numbers looked similar to the last time we saw him healthy in year 1 and year 2 with that 1,300 yards on the ground, double-digit touchdowns. You throw a couple progression, touchdowns through the air in there, and he's right there at that cusp of that RB1, 2, 3.
Interesting.
Right there. He's my pick for RB1.
I have flirted with him above where I have him ranked, but I will say RB1 was never under consideration for me. I think 1, 2, 3 personally, I think has to be McCaffrey, Bijan, and Eckler in whatever order you put them in. But again, that's why we are here, because we don't always agree, and neither one of us are right yet. But that will be all for us in this episode. This was the top 24 2023 running backs for fantasy football. These rankings are PPR rankings. Take that into account. So standard might be completely different, but we want to account for PPR, half PPR. Most people these days are PPR. So if you like the content, again, please like the video, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, hit the notification bell, leave a comment with what you thought of the video, anything like that. And I will pass it over to Cheney. Cheney, do you have any final words for the road?
Make sure to stay tuned to the channel. Make sure to hit that bell icon to get notified when the next Cheesy Corn Sports episode is dropped. We are in the middle of making all of our rankings, we're almost there rankings for the upcoming season. We will make adjustments to these rankings as preseason and the offseason progress as we get closer and closer to the season opener. But stay tuned for that, and we appreciate every single one of you guys giving us a watch.
Thanks for checking out the Cheesy Corn Sports Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss an episode. For more information or to connect with Justin and Martin, check out Cheesy Corn Sports on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you next time on Cheesy Corn Sports.